So here we're going to look at the upper plate for the Model A distributor. As you can see, I have some upper plates that have been cleaned. They've been degreased and then run through my tumbler that I have using walnut shells and polishing media overnight. Some look better than others, a little bit of corrosion and whatnot. I'm just trying to dress them up and figure out which one would work best and understand the measurements of the plate to use what parts I have to get the best fit for what I have laying around. As you can see, there's markings 13, 14, 15, and 16. That's actually the base diameter is 0.7 inches, and this is 0.713, this is 0.716. Obviously larger is not as good. Now this is kind of an arbitrary number. I use a dial caliper to do this particular measurement. I'm going to forewarn you, it is not accurate, but this Mitutoyo, while it's a little beat up, is repeatable. That's the important factor, is I know that this will give me the same measurement each time. It's very good for very relative measurements on inside, using the inside measuring portion. The outside is not so bad, it's a little bit tighter, but it's also not accurate enough for me to do precision work. When I'm doing precision work, I pull out other tools that are known to be more accurate. This is checked on a gauge block, and I have it adjusted and corrected to show me exactly 1 inch, etc., etc. So when I'm really trying to do accurate work, that's what I'm working off of. And quite frankly, though, I am not a perfect expert on this stuff. I learned by accident that this is not as accurate as I want it to be, and that's why I have these types of measuring devices lying around. Now you'll see in the back 13, 14, 15, and 16. The base diameter of the hole is 0.7 inches. I don't know the actual dimensions from the factory. This one, according to the dial calipers, is at 0.713. Now, if I do it on this using my inside measuring device, I get 716. And it's consistent to be about 3 thousandths larger when I measure using the correct tools. And I have to put into it that I am not the most experienced using these, so don't go trusting my numbers 100%. Relatively speaking, for what I'm doing, it's going to do what we need to do for this job. I'm just trying to give everyone an idea of what it's like to do higher accuracy checking of things. The ultimate place where these fit is right here on the center of the distributor housing. The part with respect to the pop-out input goes at this side. There's also the nub on this side where the distributor cap will fit into. There's also a spring involved that pushes this up to the top, hence the reason why you see wear on the tangs, because they're always kept up at the top, which is important because you don't want it rocking and causing the point gap to change as you pull the lever or whatever happens of bouncing around with the car. The important thing is how tight does it fit in the middle. Now this one here fits fairly tight, and I haven't actually measured it, and it's as tight as I'm going to get it. It's actually like a thousandth or two, it seems. My problem is I don't have a way of measuring in this hole accurately. This caliper's coming in here, gives me somewhere, and this is one of the better ones, and you can see there it's I don't trust that particular measurement. You have to get up towards the top because it's going to wear at the bottom because of the springiness. If you try to take it wide across, the bottom of the shaft is going to be larger than the top because the thickness of the plate is not as wide as the relief in the boss. So as you can see, this is showing by these calipers as being about 0.77 inches. That doesn't really make sense when you take a look at the gap and how wide the gap is. It's really down into a few thousandths. So this just illustrates the difference in the measurement between the inside jaws and the outside jaws. They're not the best I've found. So when I check the inside versus the outside, so this is indicating the 0.7 605, but when I go and check it with my micrometer, it's 707. So the inside one reads about 2 thousandths larger than the inside one. So I'm measuring here, usually the numbers are somewhere around a 10 pretty consistently on these. A few of them are a little bit smaller, down to as small as 8 thousandths on that. So that means that if we have one here that's at a 13, and this is measuring 2 thousandths larger, there's about a thousandth of play in the hole. Now, am I measuring on the oval correctly, and are we matching up ovals correctly and all that? I don't know. It's not that critical, truthfully, in this particular place. I'm just trying to illustrate errors that you need to look for, so when you go doing work elsewhere, you have to think about what you're measuring and how you're measuring it. The way I did the first check, though, quite frankly, was I just put the suckers in after I cleaned off all the grease and gook and went back and forth. And you can see, and I'm going to be quiet here, and you can listen for the type of play. Now I'm holding this up against the top. This is down, this is up. Okay, you can see the edge there change as I go down and go up. Now I'm just moving back and forth, and you can make out a little bit of play. More importantly is you can't hear much of a click. So if I go and take this off, move over to one that's 16, might as well go for the maximum change. You can see, and I don't know how well on film, but you can see there's a pretty large difference in how much movement is on this plate. How much does it really equate to when you have it on the thing? Well, a couple thousandths of gap change, that may mean something and it may not. Truthfully, they'll all probably work, but if you have a selection, it's always smart to pick the best selection. So in this case, this is the plate that I'm going to choose. Now you can see here also, this particular one doesn't have the nicest and prettiest ends. I will be using this one nonetheless. You can see the CAD plating isn't where most people would want it. This one at 16 is not too bad, but it's too big. Then I should note, this is an early reproduction one, and they did not do such a good job. I mean, it's I guess a decent job, but when you go and put the thing in, it's got a lot more play, and you really know it when it's going. So reproduction is not always your best answer, because this is a slightly used reproduction and it's got more play in it than one of my worst used original ones. So new doesn't always equate to better, and I've always said that. If you follow my posts online at all, it comes up a lot. And so those are the qualifications that I have been evaluating so far in these distributors. So just for an example, this particular distributor body, the other one as you saw was a late 31 with the years. This particular distributor body has some more wear in it. In fact, you can make out, I'm using a fine pick here, it actually has some edges here where it's worn down. And if we come here to the side, you can make out a line. Oh, let me get the angle right. If you come here to the side, you can make out a line where there's wear. And I don't know how well it's going to show up on the video, but there is definitely some levels of wear on here. Now this is the 13 plate that fit fairly well on the late 31 style, and if you watch, it has some more movement here. And if we go and take it onto the 16 here, it's actually quite a bit more noticeable how much movement there is. It's not a hell of a lot, and would it work? Yeah, of course it's going to work. But again, if you got multiple distributors to look at, this is a critical factor. The outside stuff, yeah, if it's rusty and all that, but if you want it to run right, you got to consider what's going on in the middle. I have noticed, and I don't know the effects of it. You can see that there's some wear down in from the center shafts and such. I don't know what that really means on things at this point. I'm still thinking about that, but I'm putting new stuff in the event. So, speaking of new parts, just for the hell of it, this is the shaft that I took out of that late. Wait a minute, let me check. No, this is it. So, I have here some shafts of the distributor shafts. These are the ones. This one I took out of that late 31 that I was showing you there, and if you really look at it, it doesn't look too bad. In fact, it's worn in the top part about 1/2 thousandths. This area here also is in the 1/2 thousandths area also. So I guess realistically you could probably get away with using it. I think you want to go for, these are actually they're just 1/1000ths under a 1/2 inch when they're new. And also I want to point out at this end, you can see the funny wear at the end where it had been in the shaft going down to the oil pump. Also you can see here another shaft, and you can also see the difference in the upper portion here being nice and shiny and not being exposed to engine gases, and the lower section here that's been exposed to engine gases, it clearly has some carbonization on it, I guess would be the correct term. Now this is what we call new old stock. Well, yeah, it's a little bit dirty, but hey, it's still got a lot of oil on it that I put on it. As you can see, it's got a very flat end where it goes in. You can see the nice extra grinding parts. These are all ground round. You can see here the little end here is ground down a little bit smaller in diameter. If we go to this end, you can see the relief here that's ground in and a relief that's ground in here. Now you can see these are different manufacturers, different times. This is probably I'm going to guess that this is from the 40s. This one here may be an original one for all I know. And you can see some differences in how they back grind those little things in. This one here is even more different. Does it make a difference? Who knows? You can also see this is flat across the top. This has got an angle. That's got a different angle. It's who's ever doing what, where, when, and how. They're all going to do the job. So we have the oil filler, which I'm going to make a comment. If you check your owner's manual, it does not need that special hole in the shaft like you can go and buy today for oiling the upper bushing. In fact, you'll notice that both of these that had heavy use have almost no wear on the upper bushing. So getting oil up there is not actually an issue. They do in the manual say that you're supposed to fill up the reservoir all the way. That brings it up to a midpoint, and when the shaft spins, the upper bushing will get lubricated. Getting these out, well, it's kind of an interesting thing. They have the hole in there. You take a drill bit that fits snugly. I didn't get a drill bit out that fits this hole snugly. And you have to twist and cajole until it goes. I had to twist these a bunch of times to get it out. And I still ended up in one case using a screwdriver to pop it out the last little bit because that seemed the most effective. And as you can see, there's no real issues with this. So this one has a loose spring on it. That's not have to do anything with taking it off. It was that way before I started. This one here is a little bit better. And I think it'll clean up and work better also. I have a whole pile of them elsewhere. So that's how you get the oiler out. Obviously we're going to have to get a lot of mucky crud out of these things, but that's all in due process. Getting bushings out is another item. There's many ways to do everything, of course. One thing that's really neat you can buy over at Home Depot, it's a blind hole bearing puller set. This is the working end of it. It's just a slide hammer that lets you pull out the bearings. You go and you insert this in the hole, And then as you tighten this up, the end point, this spreads out, and now you have something to catch on to the bushing, and you can pull the bushing out that way. That's one way of doing it. And then I said, wait a minute, why am I doing that? Mostly because I had the tool handy with me where I was sitting, and you know how we're all lazy. The other thing to do is I got a very specialized tool out. In this case, it's a Herbrand M513-13, which is a 30 seconds socket that just happened to fit in the hole just nice enough that it's not too snug that it won't come out, but it engages on the bushings very nicely. And I found I can just set this upside down on my vise and start beating on the socket, and out it comes. By the way, you'll see that this is a made in Japan extension. I have nice snap-on ones upstairs also. I'm not using those for doing the beating and removing the stuff because why do that? That's what these Japanese ones are good for. I always keep some of the Japanese junk around just in case. So removing the bushing, I'm just going to take the socket with the extension. I have it on a vise that's opened up that well supports the mouth of the distributor, and this particular bushing is right at the edge. Some of them are sunk in. And voila, both bushings are now out. They probably could even be reused, but we're not going to do that.